This is the Track and Field Report. In this edition, we review the London Marathon, Madrid, Spain, and the Madrid Rock and Roll Marathon. Kirani James takes on LaShawn Merritt at the Drake Relays. Hannover, Germany, and the Hannover Marathon. Yangzhou, China, and the Yangzhou Half Marathon. Rio de Janeiro as Usain Bolt takes on his first 100-meter race of the season. That and much, much more on this edition of Track and Field Report. London, England is the scene for what many consider the greatest marathon in the world. That would be the Virgin London Marathon. The women's elite start is held 40 minutes before the men's mass start, and this year's women's field, as always, was packed with the superstars of marathon running. The race organizers promoted the women as the Kenyan Fantastic Four. That would include returning champions from Kenya, Mary Keitany, and 2014 champion Eliud Kipchoege, along with 2014 runner-up Florence Kiplagat and Priska Jeptu. The Fantastic Four lagged far behind the pacemakers and stuck to their own strategy in the early stages of the race, dashing all hopes of a crack at Paula Radcliffe's course record. By the 1 hour, 11-minute, 39-second halftime, the pacemakers were still 3 seconds ahead of the pack, and though a record challenge was long gone, a thrilling race was still on offer as a group of more than 10 runners were in the lead pack. Portugal's Anna-Doche Felix grabbed the lead reins for a few minutes to shake up the usual Kenyan-Ethiopian late race leaderboard. However, the Fantastic Four were still together, but an Ethiopian trio complemented the confusion of possible winners. But the Fantastic Four was about to break up at 37 kilometers as Eliud Kipchoege dropped from the leaders, which started a steady erosion of the big pack. But it was Tigist Tufa of Ethiopia who would deal the pack its final blow, as she and compatriot Tirfi Sagai ran away from the Kenyans, and for a moment it looked like an Ethiopian first and second. But Tesgai soon faded back to the chase pack, and Tufa was left to torch the last 5 kilometers solo. Tufa was on afterburners as she served up a 16-14 5-kilometer split between 35 and 40 kilometers. By 40 kilometers, she was 11 seconds ahead of the resurging Mary Keitany. Tufa would run up the mall uncontested and unconcerned about all the pre-race hype she was not a part of, as her time was only the 12th fastest on paper. But paper didn't run today, as the Kenyan London dynasty was finally broken. Tufa would break the tape at a time of 2:23.22 to become the second Ethiopian to win this race. Mary Keitany, 2011 and 2012 champion, was able to hold off Sagai for second place in 2:23.40, a 1-second margin over the Ethiopian. Final results: Tufa 2:23.22, Keitany 2:23.40, Tesgai 2:23.41, Merg of Ethiopia 2:23.53, and Anna-Doche Felix a new personal best in 2:25.15. The mass start of 38,262 runners was also the start of the Clash of the Champions, or the men's elite race. The race organizers declared this the greatest marathon field ever assembled, as it featured 8 of the 10 fastest marathon runners of all time, and who would argue? The race got off to a sizzling start as the first mile was covered in 4:39, and the heat was kept on high as the first 5K walloped an incredible 14:31 and 10K in 29:14. The early leading group features 7 top Kenyan runners, among them Chicago Marathon winner Eliud Kipchoege, former world record holder Wilson Kipsang, current world record holder Dennis Kimmetto, and stellar names like Stanley Biwott Mutai, along with the Ethiopians Mekanin and Regessa. But it was Samuel Kipwar and Kipchoge who kept the pace hot. They passed the 35-kilometer point in 1:44.02, reducing the leading group to 6, who headed toward the finish in record time. But a couple of slower miles put the course record out of reach, so now it was all about the victory, which was secured when 2003 World 5,000-meter champion Kipchoge made the move, which was matched by Kipsang. Soon Stanley Biwott and Dennis Kimmetto were in the trailing group, as the K&K struggle between Kipsang and Kipchoge would be settled when Kipsang was left behind just after 40 kilometers by the efficient Kipchoge. It was in 2013 that Kipchoge finished second to Kipsang at the Berlin Marathon. Now the tables were turned. Kipchoge has to be the hottest marathon runner in the world right now after taking wins in Chicago in October and this London title in the official time of 2:04.42. Kipsang takes second as world record holder Dennis Kimmetto was unable to stay with the leading pair but finished third in 2:05.50 to complete an all-Kenyan men's podium. Final results, Kipchoge, Kenya, 2:04.42 in world leading time. First Ethiopian, Ragasa, 2:07.16. Guerrero of Spain, 2:09.33 in a personal best, and Sergey Ledbed of Ukraine at 2:10.21. Paula Radcliffe was the center of much of the pre-race attention, at least amongst the British domestic media, as it centered on the 2005 world champion and IAAF ambassador having her last competitive race. The 41-year-old Brit, who now resides in Monaco, returned to the scene of her greatest triumph, the phenomenal world record of 2:15.25 she set on the streets of the British capital in 2003, and it has remained unchallenged pretty much since then. Paula still placed first in the mass start female category as she crossed the line in a very classy 2:36.55. Leaving London, we turn our attention from the longest Olympic distance, the marathon, to the shortest, the 100 meters. As Brazil and the city of Rio de Janeiro host Usain Bolt in his first 100-meter race of the season in the Mano-Mano 100-meter challenge. The Mano competition has become an annual event for the sprint superstar as he has run here in 2012 and 2013. Bolt got out fast, but not great, running into a plus 1.3 head when he was trailing both Michael Rogers and Brazil's Jose Moreira. But by 50 meters, Bolt was in full flight, leaving his competitors behind and establishing another dominant performance, winning in 10.12. Bailey finished second in 10.24, with Brazil's Moreira taking third in 10.51. Final results find Bolt 10.12, Bailey second in 10.24, and Moreira third in 10.51. In the women's race, Jamaican and two-time Olympic 200-meter champion Veronica Campbell-Brown faced off against American Carmelita Jeter, Patriot Karan Stewart, and Brazilian Vitória Rosa. VCB took the win, her first race of the season, in 11.04. She comfortably defeated the 2011 world champion Jeter, who scored second place in 11.19. Final results, VCB 11.04, Carmelita Jeter, USA 11.19, Karan Stewart, Jamaica 11.30. From the sun and surf of Brazil, we head to the rainy and cold conditions of Madrid, Spain for the start of the Madrid Rock and Roll Marathon. The Spanish capital is host of the 38th edition of the marathon, now known as the Rock and Roll Marathon, which features a starting crowd of almost 25,000 people for the IAAF Silver Label Road Race. The defending champion and course record holder Kipchoge was on hand to defend his title, but any chance of a new course record seemed to be dashed by the rainy, gloomy 10 degrees Celsius conditions. The race got off to a good start as the lead pack of more than 10 runners navigated the course in an honest 10-kilometer time of 31:16. But by the halfway point, the pacemaker Thomas Ayeko led the shrinking group to a halfway time of 1:05.26, but he dropped out of the race shortly after 25 kilometers. This left 5 Kenyans, including last year's winner and Ethiopia's Wosen Demis, still together at 35 kilometers, which was reached in 1:49.30. However, the returning champion Chebe always looked the strongest man on the day, and shortly afterwards moved up a gear and broke away. Demis hung on in the wake of Chebe until 39 kilometers, leaving only Kipchoge to try and unseat the champion. But Koech raised the white flag 2 kilometers from the finish, leaving Chebe alone in the final stretch. Chebe successfully defended his title as he crossed the line in a respectable 2:12 flat, making him the second man to win back-to-back titles since the race begun in 1978. Koech would hang on for second place in 2:12.30. Faris Kimani overtook the Ethiopian Demis in the closing stages to take third place in 2:12.57, making it an all-Kenyan podium. Final results, Kenya takes 7 of the top 8 places, led by Chebe in 2:12, followed by Kipchoge in 2:12.30. On the ladies' side, Monica Kipchoge made it a Kenyan double in Madrid. Kipchoge was able to sprint away from the Ethiopian Marta Tigbe in the final 500 meters to overtake Tigbe with 3 seconds in the official time of 2:33.42. Women's final results, Monica Kipchoge, Kenya 2:33.42, Marta Tigbe, Ethiopia 2:33.45, and Meseret Biratu, Ethiopia 2:34.32. We leave rainy Spain and head to similar conditions in China, where more than 30,000 people assembled at the city sports center for the start of the Yangzhou International Half Marathon. The Yangzhou Half celebrates a men's course record of 1:01.10 and 1:08:59 for women. And this year, the ideal cloudy and cool but dry conditions coupled with a very flat point-to-point course pointed to a speedy race and a new course record. From the beginning, those dreams seemed to be answered as the pace was fast from the gun of the men's race as defending champion Yanghouz of Eritrea was in the thick of the pack, pushing for a new course record. The leading pack of 16 passed the 2-kilometer mark in 6:09 and 4 kilometers in 11:37. This leading group was trimmed to 12 when passing 10 kilometers in a speedy 28:37 and then to 9 runners as 15 kilometers was reached in 42 minutes 42 seconds. After 16 kilometers, a 5-man group took over the pacing duties with Kenyan Vincent Yater leading in front. The Kenyan tried to pull away with frequent changes of speed, but only Ethiopian cross-country champion Tamarat Tola dropped back. The quartet was almost shoulder-to-shoulder at the 20-kilometer mark with Moshenek Berhanu. Powerful home stretch run could not be matched by any of the remaining East African contingent. The Ethiopian smashed through the course record as he crossed the finish line in 59:52, establishing the fastest half marathon ever recorded in China and the first sub-60-minute time recorded in the country as well. Final results: Berhanu, Ethiopia 59:52, Kipchoege, Kenya 59:55, Amlom-Son, Eritrea 59:55, and Yater, Kenya 59:55. The top 4 men all break the magical 60-minute barrier. The women's competition was also a thriller that witnessed a series of exchanges of lead in the final kilometer between Ethiopia's Warknecht Degefa and Kenya's Flomina Chayej. The 32-year-old Chayej surpassed Degefa in the last 100 meters and maintained the advantage to the finish line to come home in 1:08:36, officially 1 second ahead of the Ethiopian who finished as runner-up for the second consecutive year, and Yangzhou visibly disappointed to miss out once again. Final results: Flomina, Kenya 1:08:36, Degefa, Ethiopia 1:08:37, Gudeta, Ethiopia also 1:08:53, and Cheretich, Kenya 1:09 flat. Hanover, Germany is the scene for the 25th edition of the HAJ Hannover Marathon. With temperatures slightly below 10 degrees Celsius at the start, overcast skies, and hardly any wind, conditions were almost perfect. The men were on pace for a course record at halfway but faded in the second half. Nevertheless, it was a close battle with the top 3 finishers crossing the line within 18 seconds of each other. But it was Kenyan Jacob Chisari who was able to preserve and take the win in 2:09:32 with a 10-second advantage over Ethiopian Chala Adunga in second place. The women's race was not a thriller as defending champion Saouid Ait Salian took the title in 2:27:21, more than a minute ahead of second place. Final result: Salim successfully defends her Hanover title in 2:27:21. Olga Kotovska from Ukraine 2:29:13 and Makanya from South Africa in 2:31:02. And the men's results: Jacob Chisari of Kenya 2:09:32, Chala Adunga from Ethiopia 2:09:42, and Martin Kazgai from Kenya 2:09:50. Warsaw, Poland is the scene of yet another major marathon in the IAAF Silver Label Series. More than 15,000 were on hand for the 9:30 start of the Polish Classic. Haile Berhanu seized control of the race in the final meters to claim the 2015 Orleans Warsaw Marathon victory. The 21-year-old Ethiopian took the honors in a very nice 2:07:57, taking his career record to 3 marathon starts and 3 marathon victories. The top 6 men all finished within 32 seconds of each other. Kenya's Robert Chimsa took second place in a great marathon debut of 2:08:07. Final results: Berhanu, Ethiopia 2:07:57, Robert Chimose, Kenya 2:08:05, and Janeti Marcos of Ethiopia 2:08:11. The 105th edition of the Drake Relays in Des Moines, Iowa, USA is our final stop. A new hurdle star was unveiled in Iowa at the Drake Relays as Jasmine Stowers provided the undoubted highlight of the final day of the competition. Jasmine scorched over the barriers to win the 100 meters in a mind-blowing meeting record and personal best of 12.40. The U.S. Indoor 60-meter hurdles champion was aided by a 1.5 meters per second breeze in her back, but still facing chilly conditions. Stowers sliced 0.31 from her personal best, moved to 12th on the all-time list for the event, and defeated a top-class field in Des Moines that included 2008 Olympic champion Dawn Harper Nelson. Harper Nelson, last year's overall diamond race winner in the event, was second at 12.71, just edging out Christy Casson, who was third in 12.72. World champion Brianna Rollins, fourth in 12.75. Queen Harrison, 12.76, Sharika Nevis in 12.86, and Tiffany Porter in 12.90. The cold and windy weather didn't affect world indoor 400-meter champion Francine McCrory either. She set a world-leading time of 50.13 in the women's 400 meters and broke a meeting record that had stood for 28 years. Sonia Richards-Ross was a distant second at 51.09, with Jamaica's Novaline Williams-Mills third at 51.11. Final results: Francine McCrory, meet record 50.13, Sonia Richards-Ross 51.09, Novaline Williams-Mills 51.11, Natasha Hastings at 51.25, Jessica Beard 52.14. Big things were happening in the men's 400 as Grenada's Olympic 400-meter champion Kirani James showed stunning early season form in his first season match race against arch nemesis LaShawn Merritt. But this was not the usual to-the-wire race between the two competitors, as James blew up the Drake Relays track to win the 400 meters in 44.22 and break Michael Johnson's meeting record of 44.41, which had stood since 1996. Final results: Kirani James in a blistering 44.22 meet record, Youssef Masrati 44.70, and the amazing Chris Brown at 44.76. Tony McQuaid 45.14, and LaShawn Merritt all the way down in 5th place at 45.27. Well, that's all the action from Track and Field Report. For now, we will see you soon.